So this episode is a little bit different. Instead of interviewing another interesting founder, investor, or researcher, I wanted to step back and reflect on the last 12 months. On a personal level, I had a goal last year, my birthday, to meet at least 100 companies in those upcoming 12 months. And I've got the goal. I've celebrated last week and spending the year evaluating technologies, meeting founders, sitting with investors, visiting test sites, and talking with operators across different industries. Many of you have asked me what patterns I was seeing, where capital is moving, what give me confidence in a company, what founders consistently underestimate, and what I'd personally be careful about if I were investing today. So this episode is my attempt to answer those questions, not with predictions, but with my observations from the field. So we'll talk about where capital is moving as the way I see it, what investors are actually buying, why operational learning may become the biggest competitive advantage of the next decade, how geopolitics are changing product decisions, and why I believe the companies that define this era won't simply build better technologies, but would be those that build better systems, hardware and software. These are not predictions, important to say, and they're simply patterns that I've seen often enough that I think they're worth sharing. So the one thing that surprised me and I want to start with is it was a realization for me, I can say through the year. We keep calling this the AI revolution because all those big AI companies, that's all their marketing story, but I'm not sure that's the right name anymore if we put it in perspective of autonomous vehicles, robotics, physical AI, and what I'm investigating around. And I think we're watching intelligence actually leave the screen and enter the physical world through vehicles, Waymo as an example, factories, data centers, warehouses that have robotics navigate inside them, hospitals, the battlefields. And that changes the challenge completely because software can fail quietly, but hardware cannot. And that was also one of the reasons I've started doing technical diligence, the chances that you have on software. And physical AI has to survive weather, heat, dust, operators from different backgrounds, communications, limitations in communications, supply chains, which does not exist in software, customers, and to actually deal with reality. That's what we are facing. That's what we have seen. And technology no longer wins on performance alone. I feel that it wins on the ability to survive those realities that we're building it for. It could be in a direction that all our focus is in the US, different expectations from the platform. Middle East, worldwide, Southeast Asia, Africa, different requirements will be out of that system. But I want to start with what I've learned and actually made me trust founders along that journey. One story that really can explain that is the 50 controller board. I wrote it down in my notes, and I came up with a question to one of those teams about what happens after 60 hours that their drone is flying in 45 degrees heat. And their answer was, we never thought about that. And I realized that I stopped looking for founders with all the answers. I started paying attention to those who learned the fastest, that they were honest enough to say that they don't know, comfortable enough to say, let's test this, let's bring in the operator, see what happens. That's where I felt the most confident about someone that could build a huge company and not just a nice product to have, where curiosity compounds, confidence doesn't. And the strongest engineering teams invite the reality into their products, and they don't try to develop something that is only functioning in the lab and then too late taking it out to deal with the real environment. And I think the goal is to develop as early as possible that one thing that you want to test out there with the operator that is potentially going to be the person that would use that type of vehicle, if we're not talking about autonomous vehicles already, and get to watch them operate before giving the feedback and taking decisions around the next steps with your products. I think the operator became part of the product, and I will explain. One thing really surprised me that many technologies looked incredible during demonstrations, but very few of them were ready for somebody besides the drone operator of the company to operate. Like eventually, every company reaches the same point. The product has to leave the engineering team, and then there's a person on the other side. He requires a checklist. He requires certain capabilities in order to operate. And a great demonstration actually proved the technology, and it has what goes in a demonstration. But I think the repeatable workflow would actually be what proves that a company really understands what they're building, what they're bringing new into that word, and why are they doing something different. The next topic that I wanted to cover is that I've seen that the investors started asking different questions than before. If 3 years ago, most conversations started with the market size and who is your entry point, what's your go-to market if you're selling something in defense. So today, it often begins somewhere else, and like the question became much more around where are your batteries coming from, who manufactures your electronics, is it in-house, how long does it take for delivery, are there tariffs on things that are included in your product, and can you manufacture at scale? Those things didn't exist 3 years ago. So I feel that we are going through that progress, getting to learn more about who installs the system. What are the capabilities of the individuals working on the production line? And if another customer could deploy it in a month, even after you already had one customer, questions become more about how do you scale? And at first I thought that investors had become more engineers in the way that they ask questions, but actually the market became much more operational. It's way more clear with everything happening worldwide that technical diligence has evolved, and we're not anymore evaluating products as products. We're evaluating the systems, in which I think supply chain is a main parameter defining a strategy of a company and defining, of course, the strategy of an investor deciding in what to invest. This year made me realize that supply chain is not anymore something that you solve after product market fit. You need from the very early beginning of your company to imagine if you're building a drone, where is your processor coming from? From Taiwan? Okay. What is on the way for it to come? What are the risks? Your battery cells are made in China. What does it mean? Your radio is from Europe. Great. Where is the assembly taking place? Is it somewhere else? Then the Strait of Hormuz becomes unstable. Bab el-Mandab, just read lately the news. Shipping changes, tariff change, insurance changes, the times double, and then nothing changed in the engineering, but everything changed in the business. And then the target price that you had on a product is not anymore the same that you had before. And I could go deeper into that about critical minerals that in some deep tech technologies or different types of solutions. If we stay in the drones area, so magnets that are very critical for engines could be something that is very much influenced about the geopolitical changes. And of course, the government procurement. Demand became crazily fast, and the end user is requiring us to work in a speed that haven't existed before. Not only about the price. Of course, everybody wants it to be cheaper and cheaper in order to balance the asymmetry that exists right now in defense, but it's also about the speed and how can we ensure that our supply chain keeps existing and functioning safely, even though all our world is changing and from one day to another, there could be a stop on one of the parts of my supply chain. And do I have another source for those same parts in a different place, or do I have reserves of parts that I ordered before I had orders coming in? Because I understand that that means a lot for my capability to provide those products to my clients on time. So supply chain has become part of product strategy and increasingly part of company valuation, as I see it, looking and learning what investors care about in July 2026. One discussion that I heard repeatedly this year was no longer how capable is the system. I mentioned systems beforehand, so we're moving from product to system, but it became how much does it cost to create the desired effect, or in military language, cost per kill. The asymmetry is changing. We're increasingly asking whether it makes sense to defeat a low-cost autonomous drone with an interceptor that costs 100 times more expensive. And that changes also the procurement, the doctrine, the manufacturing, the importance of autonomy in the process. And at the end of the day, the investment that is required in order to bring up a product that meets those end goals of our target market. And the companies that reduce the operational asymmetry, they don't just improve performance, but they'll be the ones reshaping the market. I want to speak about what are investors actually buying today, as from what I've seen in the past months and analyzing some acquisition announcement lately. At first, I would say that they looked into robotics acquisitions. We would see some deals in those spaces. And then I asked myself, what was actually being acquired? Let's get deeper into that. Is it the mission autonomy, the perception, the operational data, the manufacturing capability of that company to scale fast and not be dependent on what I mentioned before as a wide supply chain that could be creating a stop for my production line? Or is it about engineering talent, or actually about the integration capabilities and how simple that company makes integration with others and knows how to connect with the other participants in the industry that they're playing in? And the biggest companies are not choosing between hardware and software. They're building systems that each hardware and software strengthen the other. The hardware gets you into the market, but the integration and learning keeps you there. And that's what I feel and understand that would be a game changer for companies that want to raise funds these days. Being able to handle and being capable of learning fast and adapting your product to the fast changes that are taking place in the industry right now. Now, that's a question that have came up to me because everybody wants to know where's the money going right now. So this is one of the questions I received most, and From what I've been seeing, capital keeps moving towards areas where technology solves real operational constraints, right? So I didn't give you any secret right here, but I'll try breaking it down into how do I see all of this happening and where is actually the focus. Mission autonomy would be um, something that the winners in that space being able to show the speed of either taking a vehicle that is managed by an operator and making it autonomous in a low price could be a winner. Counter drone that is cost effective and uses technology that could probably cover few of the stages in counter drone. We've seen it in the battlefields and how strong is the effect when one side is attacking infrastructures which influence the civilians of a country, and suddenly there's no light and there's no petrol, and all that being done by drones. Electronic warfare, which of course opens up to many different aspects, but if I would generalize that topic, that could influence all different types of infrastructures, starting from the data centers, transportation, and actually affect all the supply chain of one side, or create an advantage for the other. We have seen um, maritime autonomy saving pilots in the Strait of Hormuz, other vehicles in Ukraine that were carrying autonomous ground vehicles and bringing them to shore, taking them off there, and basically helping them take control of new geographical spaces that soldiers didn't arrive at before. Resilient communications, mesh networks, different ways to communicate. The C4 of the unmanned vehicles, the ground, the sea, and the air should be able to communicate one with another. Manufacturing in the United States would be the only option if you would like to build a drone or a robot within the United States or close enough to the areas where those products are required. Dual use logistics is also something that is very interesting to look at. Platforms that are carrying and helping move from military bases things faster. And that's also where I see space for softwares and facilities that would be able to provide a response for those so many companies that are developing products now, and they need a place to test them, um, a location to integrate them, to test how could they deal with different types of weather if they want to sell their products worldwide. Validation, standardization, that would be something that is coming up very fastly, and of course manufacturing automation terms. And it reminds me that I met those two young guys that quit Cornell, and they've built a 500-pound drone. They've sold the company for, if I'm not wrong, $85 million, and now they're working for a way bigger company. Those are one of the examples that I can give about choosing a specific niche and a use case that your team has the capability to solve, and you understand that the bigger ones, it requires too much from them, and it's a headache that their team would work and develop those type of technologies in-house. So the market is rewarding technologies that can move from experimentation into repeatable deployment, doing it fast and smart. Geography became a competitive advantage right now, and I think that that's something that I underestimated. And it really matters where you build your company. Actually, it matters more than ever right now, and not because of taxes, but because of your access to operators. That's first. Access to testing. Regulation sometimes limits you from being able to do that, and there are no experimentation fields that you could try that platform or technology fast enough to say, okay, that's the direction that I'm taking it. And then obviously access to military experiments that if you're focused on defense specifically, you would need to meet the requirements of the operator as soon as possible. That continues to getting access to grants, to manufacturing, to universities that are very strong in the field that you're developing, so you could get top researchers to join your team and be in charge of the R&D and help you get your competitive advantage stronger, the IP as solid as possible, improving your potential to be that company that everyone wants to buy. The companies that learn the fastest usually are not isolated. They're always connected to what's going on in the universities, in the field, in the military. What is the requirement of the end user? The successful ones that I've met are those who were close to the people who constantly challenge their assumptions and try to look for a better way to deal with a specific situation, or already understand what are the problems to come, understanding the map and what technologies are going to be involved and implemented where, and then catching that gap and reaching out to the right person and saying, okay, I already know what's going to be the next step there. What is going to be our challenge? We've already developed something there. Let me implement it as early as it is right now. We can do a pilot. We can present 60% of what we're claiming to do, but at least let's put it in the field and start earning the data, learning about our product, getting the feedback from operators. And that's gold in these days, that there's so much hype around and everybody's building, and the big companies are doing at the same time that very small startups in the garage are developing something similar. And there are advantages for these and advantages for the others. So the location has become part of company strategy. You got to consider that, not just the company logistics, but also where do you choose to locate your company in matter of access to clients, manufacturing, and all I mentioned above. And what changed my thinking the most, I would say, is that the companies I remember aren't necessarily the ones with the most advanced technology. Of course, I've seen some very cool biotech technologies out there that seems like a Black Mirror episode or things like that, but they were the ones that actually changed their minds very fast. They went out, they tested something, and they realized very quickly what they have to change in order to move on. The founders that were willing to learn, the operators that were willing to challenge the system and not say, I'm not doing it, it's my first time of trying. That's why we do experiments. That's why we have to test, and as early as possible. The investors that are asking better questions, and the organizations that are turning every deployment into a lesson. That's where and how I believe companies will be evaluated, seeing that both sides are becoming smarter. Investors are requiring more specific elements and insights from the founders, and they are willing already to see things happen fast. The future belongs to the learning organizations. That's how I see the upcoming year, as an opportunity for those founders that are open to say, I don't know, and I'm open to learn. And when I started this year, I thought that I was going to evaluate technologies. That's what I had in mind. Technical diligence. I would test different types of vehicles in the field. There's a gap out there. That's what I've figured out. And now looking back, I think I spent much more time evaluating organizations and learning more about the people. How do they learn? What is their debrief? How do they adapt? How they integrate different disciplines in the organizations? How they respond when reality proves they're wrong. And I've seen many of those occasions in the past year. The ones that their technologies were different, the markets were different, the problems were different. I came up with um, one use case that I thought about that company having to solve, and suddenly in the field we've realized that they have other problems, and it's not even there to meet that use case, and maybe something else would be the direction that they should take earlier. But the organizations that impressed me shared that one characteristics: they learned faster than the environment around them was changing. And that's the era that we're living right now. It's not only about the noise that we're feeling all the time, that we hear that these guys are doing this thing and that company have been acquired in $1 trillion. The numbers can confuse us. The environment could change very quickly. Regulations, requirements, everything is moving very fast. But if I leave you with one thought from these 100 conversations, it's don't focus only on building better technology. Build an organization that learns faster than that the technology evolves, because that's what I believe will define the next generation of the industry leaders. So that's it for this special episode. Thank you for taking the time to listen and for following the podcast over the past year. Many of the ideas I've shared today came directly from your questions, comments, and conversations after previous episodes or in conferences. So I'd love to hear what resonated with you and what did you disagree with. If you're seeing different trends or building in a specific market or investing in a particular area, let's continue that conversation. Tell me, what are your opinions? What are you looking at? What lessons you've learned? And if there is a topic you'd like me to explore in more depth, so let me know. I've collected a lot more observation that I could fit into this one episode, and I'm always happy to dedicate an episode to a specific topic if I would know that it's something that interests you listeners, any technology, market, or trend. So thanks again for listening. Until next time.